It's Doc and Ellie. It's Doc and Ellie. And it's Doc and Ellie.
Wisdom of an elder, mind of a seeker, curiosity of a child, and memories, well, they come wrapped in people like Old Man Baker. If you're from around here, where's here? Thomaston, Georgia. Thomaston is located in Upson County in west central Georgia. We're a small town, population around 10,000, and we serve as the county seat of Upson. It has roots as a textile and manufacturing town, but today its economy includes manufacturing, health, education, and bunches of new retail coming to town. There's a big to-do right now about a plastics recycling plant that wants to build a 2.5 million square foot facility to repurpose used plastic into plastic. In an Independence Day celebration at a town showcase, Greatest Generation Park, hundreds of people voiced their like or dislike by petition about whether this plant is needed or wanted in our town. A full 98.5% of the people voted thumbs down when given their first opportunity to voice their opinion. See, the people had never heard of this plant or its concept of saving the planet until it was announced that a deal had already been done. 98.5% opposed. This one we'll keep an eye on. This is my hometown. You'll remember Old Man Baker's store out on Jeff Davis Road at Old Alabama Road. That's where a volunteer fire station now sits. Unless they dug them up, there might be a gasoline storage tank buried beneath the red clay. How do I know that? Because I spent many summer days perched beside Old Man Baker, eating pimento cheese and mayo sandwiches Mama had made, and helping Old Man Baker pump some kerosene into cans. See, back then, beyond using kerosene for heating and stuff, there were still tractors and trucks that had 2 gas tanks. A small tank for gasoline to start the engine, and a larger tank for the cheaper kerosene to keep it running. From men like Old Man Baker, I learned what life's real treasure is, how to keep learning and working right on through the years left, straight to the end. Whether that call was for supper or the final call to heaven. Hey, y'all, welcome to the first Doc and Ellie Pubcast. The one in the Greek fisherman's hat, well, that's Doc. I started wearing this between jobs back in Florida when I spent too much time on tourist fishing boats. I spent so much time on those boats that people thought I was part of the crew, and I was baiting hooks. And a lady from up north gifted a hat something like this, which became a signature of what people, with their time, when they were figuring out how and what to do on their next steps in life. They would do things like I did, work on a fishing boat. And the cool one over there, the Aussie beauty, that's Ellie. Why do we call this a pubcast? We see it as a place where people gather around to settle differences, sometimes to celebrate just what God's done given us to make the best of. Mama said that the house wine of the South was sweet tea, and we pour a lot of that around here. Ellie and I came back home to build a restaurant and to fulfill a promise to Mama to write a book about growing up in a small southern town, as she and Daddy did, and their mom and Daddy, and the one before that, and as far back as the late 1800s. I would not trade my South for anyone's North, nor would I trade my travels and working in the North and the West, and all that comes with seeing different things and learning different ways, and then coming back to my ever humble beginnings. Not much has changed, not even me. Ellie and I met in Australia. One day I'll tell you the whole story of how we met, but today, let's start with a short version. It begins actually a long way from Thomaston, in Sydney, Australia, 2 decades ago. I was tagging along with some academic types talking about broadcast deregulation in the United States, being a lifelong broadcaster and a lover of broadcasting and experiencing up close how lives and careers were ripped apart by deregulation of the radio industry. Australia had an old saying, if America sneezes, Australia catches a cold. So they wanted to hear from me, someone who had been on the front line, about the impact of the 1996 Telecommunications Act. Its goal on paper was to modernize regulations for the new era of cable, satellite, emerging digital technologies, and even AI that we're now facing. But one provision changed the broadcasting world forever. It lifted ownership caps on radio and TV stations. Before the act, a company could only own a limited number of stations, only 2 per market, 3 in the larger cities. But the Telecommunications Act erased those restrictions, allowing a single corporation to own as many stations as it could afford. Floodgates open. Man, the trading frenzy was crazy. Almost overnight, consolidation took over. Companies like Clear Channel, which later became iHeartMedia, went on the buying spree, scooping up hundreds of radio stations. What had once been patchwork of locally owned outlets, homegrown DJs, newsrooms, unique personalities, it all shifted into a system of national networks. Music playlists became standardized. Programming was syndicated. Decisions once made in the studio or the newsroom were now made in distant corporate offices. I became part of the corporate world, balancing the wishes of bean counters with the wishes of devoted people behind the mic. For career broadcasters, especially those who built reputations in small and mid-sized markets, the impact was brutal. Many lost jobs as companies streamlined operations. One morning host could be piped into dozens of towns. Local newsrooms were gutted, replaced by wire copy or even shared regional reports. Young people who once saw broadcasting as a calling suddenly found the ladder much shorter, fewer rungs on the ladder. Meanwhile, profits soared for the corporations, but the culture of radio and TV, the sense that your local station reflected your community, that faded. For many career broadcasters, the 1996 Telecommunications Act marked the end of an era, the shift from local storytelling to corporate broadcasting. But some survived and live on today. Deregulation sold itself as liberty, but too often it left the public with less. Less service, less trust, less of the local faces and steady hands that built communities. In its wake, neighbors became numbers. Industries became empires. But some survived and live on today. We honor one of the survivors, our local radio station, one of the key people who has kept it going and growing, Mickey Thrasher. He's in the studio, and he'll be with us in just a few minutes. Back to Australia. So I gave my little talk at the university, way down under, and I was heading out the row of seats. A hand reached out. She smiled and says, "Pretty good presentation, Doc, but it's terribly flawed." Sounds like something she might think about saying in an intimate moment later on. A pretty good presentation, but terribly flawed, Doc. Yep, that's the first thing she ever said to me. My talk was about Alexander the Great. I told her, I've studied all his battles from here to there. She came back. I grew up playing on Alexander's battlefields. Checkmate. I said, what's next? She looked at her watch and said, it's about 4 o'clock. How about high tea? And that's when her plan started to unfold. She knew I was from a little town in Georgia, Thomaston. She already knew that because she was attached to my part of the group, and having the inquisitive mind a researcher of her caliber has, she knew where I was from. She knew just about everything about me. So she said, "You don't see the Southern Cross constellation in your part of the world, do you?" I said, "No, but the Big Dipper over the Flint River is mighty special." She grinned. "Well, maybe I'll see it someday. But if you're up for a drive to Melbourne, there's a little town with a pub and the most stunning view of the Southern Cross in Australia. The town's name, now get this, the town's name was Thomastown with a W, not Thomaston. She arranged our evening in Thomastown. Instant connection. That night under the stars, admiring the old mariner's path, we talked till sunrise. Next thing I knew, I was canceling my flight back to San Francisco. Next thing after that, we were driving her brand new Volkswagen Golf right up onto a ferry headed for Tasmania. The devil of it all. And here we are, 25 years later, still discovering new things about life and about each other, and now sharing them here with you. While we sort out the right blend of my kind of food from childhood to hers, homemade, fresh, and healthy, we decided a good way to jump in at the ground level and document from the mouths of people who lived it like I did what hometown is all about for the book. What got us here and where we're going. I contributed some pieces to the local paper. I did a daily feature on the radio station, listened to the feedback. Most people found our presentation interesting. Some loved it. Some people, mostly of the ruling class, the deregulator of local wishes class, I'll call them, didn't like it so much because we brought a brand new style of news reporting that people had to adjust to. We call it citizen journalism. Independent, no taxpayer funding, no government-provided talking points printed freely week in and week out. I got an email with this take on the podcast. I'll say the PUB stands for Public Upson Broadcasting. Maybe. Let's wrap up the Australia angle of the story before we bring in Mickey to talk about how they survived the complete overhaul of the industry of broadcasting. Ellie's VW Golf that started this ride we're on is still brand new. It's parked in her mother's garage. We've toured the continent in it on our trips back to her home. One of the most glorious spots on earth, down under, is Australia. Thanks for being with us. We still roam the countryside in it when visiting one of the greatest cities in the world, and that is Sydney, Australia. Next up, Thomaston's best known and most loved, our own radio station, Fun 101 and Mickey Thrasher. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome to the pub Mickey Thrasher, Fun 101 radio station, Thomaston, Georgia. Mickey, you started in 1969 when radio still had a certain magic to it. What first drew you to broadcasting?
I would have to say the first time I heard Milo Hamilton do an Atlanta Braves baseball game. I knew then this is what I want to do. Okay. I used to record the Braves games on reel-to-reel my dad had. And I would actually go back, not to listen to the game, but to listen to the way Milo did the game. And I was just intrigued by the picture that they would paint. You know, that brought me into it.
So did you aspire to be a baseball announcer?
Not really. I just wanted to be an announcer. I wanted to get into broadcasting.
I remember the first time Daddy took me to Ponce de Leon Ballpark to see the Atlanta Crackers. And I don't know why, but when I walked up the ramp into the grandstand area, I was automatically looking for the TV cameras because that was my connection to the Crackers.
You wanted to be a TV star.
I wanted to be a TV star. Here we are. Describe those first days at WSFT, which I think stood for We Speak for Thomaston. Is that correct?
I believe that's what it stood for.
Okay. What was it like?
Well, I had a minor role there. They were looking for someone to do Little League Baseball. And Bill Hewley, that you know,
Fine, man.
knew him at the time,
Yes.
I went to see him. I was just going into my freshman year in high school. And I said, look, this is something I think I would really like to do. Did a little air check, and about 30 minutes later, he said, you're doing Little League Baseball this year.
Okay.
So I started in 69, just before I got into high school.
Okay. And the WSFT studios, I think the building's still there, is it? Or is it gone?
The studios are gone, I believe.
Are gone.
Yeah.
It's out by the golf course.
Right.
Right before you
right
get
before you get to the golf
before
course.
you get there. Yeah, Hewley was a great man. So you've lived through ups and counties, transformations, and when you think back What was the feel of Thomaston in 1969?
Well, the heartbeat of the community were the mills,
Sure.
because we had the old mill, the bleachery, Peerless, Martha Mills, and there were the different sections: East Thomaston, Silvertown, and then the city. And that was probably the best thing I remember about it. I played East Thomaston baseball at the old Scout Hut just below the swimming pool down there. Now, if you ride by that place now, it looks like a jungle. But there are some great memories hidden in those trees back in there. But that basically, living on the Mill Village on Park Lane, and I think one of the neatest things, the mills at the time on Saturdays when midnight hit. Now, I'm just a preteen at the time. I'm in bed, and when the mills they always shut down at midnight on Saturday. The silence woke me up.
Okay.
And because they shut down.
Sure.
Because it was Sunday, they honored the Sabbath. And, people may not even grasp that idea these days. But
Did your family work in the mills?
they did, my mom and my dad.
You did not.
A little bit in high school.
Okay. And there was kind of a mantra that I recall of the fear of ending up working in the mill. Growing up here, and I can hear my older brother saying now, boy, when I finish high school, I don't want to work in the mill. I want to go somewhere else. Nothing negative about the mills, because the mills provided it all in exchange for our work. We had the best schools. We had the best recreation programs. We had our own theater. So it wasn't so much, I think what I was hearing was the aspirations of a young person. We always want to do better. We always want to do something different than the previous generation. Because in those days, we were pretty much taught to do one thing and get good at it. And an awful lot of people repeated that one thing for the rest of their lives, whether it was plumbing or working in the mill or whatever it might be. And then today you have so many different opportunities. You're pulled in so many different directions. I've kind of landed with this philosophy that I want to learn how to keep learning, because I know there's something more. There's something next. I did not know Thomaston was next. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what's next for you.
Retirement?
I don't think so. Our families came out of the cotton fields to work for the man, and that was the mill, for a good wage, steady work, good life in exchange for their hard work. We were surrounded by cotton fields and peach orchards, and they were transformed from farming to industry pretty much by one family, and that family is still here today. Beyond the cotton mills, what other kind of jobs or businesses gave the town its heartbeat in those days? It was pretty much the mill, but there were other things going on. Anything come to mind? Part-time jobs you had?
Well, my part-time job was radio.
It was radio.
And besides that, I mean, for the most part, like you said, it was the mills.
It was the mill.
Now, you did have some people that would commute out of town for jobs. There weren't that many, but some did do that.
Remember Tennessee Ernie Ford?
Yes,
Ford?
absolutely.
Staying with my grandmother over on Howell Street, and had a little record player, play 45 RPMs on, and a friend had loaned me that record, and I put the needle on it, and I'm playing, and suddenly my grandmother comes in and takes the record off the turntable and breaks it, because she heard Tennessee Ernie Ford say, "You owe your soul to the company store. Son, you don't owe your soul to nobody except Jesus." That's my memory of one of my favorite memories of growing up here. Beyond the cotton mills, all these other businesses, but where did people shop? Where did they shop for groceries and
Well,
seafood?
back then we had Collins Grocery was on Barnesville Street.
Okay.
You had the Colonial Store.
Oh.
Now, do you remember what the Colonial Store, the original Colonial Store?
I remember the
All
name.
right. You would be now, it used to be Tucker Communications, where the city is now building what will be the farmer's market.
Right.
It was right across the street.
Okay.
But you had the Colonial Store. You had an A&P store as well.
Yep.
And then, of course, eventually Piggly Wiggly comes in, but those were the main ones.
And across from the A&P, if I recall, was where the telephone company was.
That's right.
Okay. And on Barnesville Street that you mentioned, there was a seafood place. Do you remember that?
Well, the seafood place?
Yeah.
Now, you're talking about Wisham's
Wisham's.
Seafood. It was actually, I think, Hightower Street, where the Dairy Queen is in Thomaston now.
Okay.
Just kind of at an angle from it, up down toward the south side and across the street.
Right.
You had Wisham's there. Now, Wisham's, I want to say originally was in the Little Five Points area, and then moved to that location on Hightower Street.
I just remember we would go there to get our catfish on Fridays, for the weekend. How many digits were in your telephone number?
Back then, I can remember. I remember my house number was, you just dialed 4963.
Okay.
That's all you had to dial, and then it got, of course, 647-4963.
Right.
And then eventually we're 706-647-4963.
Were the party lines gone by the time?
You could pick it up like Mayberry. You pick it up and
So
hear
you
what was
did
going
experience the party lines.
on. To a degree.
As a child?
Yeah, to a degree.
Do you know how many people typically were on a line?
I would, the most that I probably experienced were maybe one other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They were designed in this town for 6 people per line. And boy, if you wanted to spread some gossip, beyond the church's community of enduring faith and hard work and common sense and fairness, is there anything more important than football?
Children.
Children play football.
Yeah, but, football, it's got its place, but and let me just say this. Coming up in this community, I started playing when I was like 6 or 7 years of age. Mm-hmm. Russell Oglesby.
Okay.
Well, we had a peewee team. It was a traveling peewee team.
Okay.
I knew nothing about football. And this man took me under his wing and explained the game to me. I just thought you just got out there and ran into each other and knocked somebody down.
Right.
But there was a concept to it, and he's the one that taught me, well, this is how the game is played. And then, of course, just evolving from there.
The idea of learning one thing and repeating it for the rest of your life, which was kind of the way of life back then. We were blessed that coaches seemed to follow that creed. When they came to a town like Thomaston, like Coach Dawkins did, I think Coach Dawkins came somewhere from South Carolina. So I think he played college ball in South Carolina, but he came here to stay. I think George Wilson did the same thing. George came to stay.
You had the perfect feeder system back in those days, starting with what Russell Oglesby implemented with the Pee Wee team.
Okay.
And once you left that, the next step was midgets with Coach Dawkins. After that, it was junior high. Now, when I played junior high, Coach George Wilson had been there, but Bobby Smith had moved into the role of head coach at the junior high Tigers.
I played midget football, I guess it was, with Mike Kevin, who was a great quarterback. And Johnny Caldwell, I can still see him skirting through the line. He was quite a little halfback. Ronnie Lowe had the biggest feet on the team.
Ronnie Lowe may have been the best ball player to come through this community.
Yeah. Well, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Tommy Purdue taught me how to hit a golf ball, and thank goodness he did.
Did you ever see Tommy Purdue hit a golf ball?
I did. Actually, that was part of the teaching, and that was at Silvertown Ballpark when Coach Purdue said, you hit a pretty good baseball. Ever hit a golf ball? No, sir, never. Well, come on, man. So we started hitting probably with him. It was probably a pitching wedge. With me, who knows, maybe a 5-iron or something like that. Right down the right field line with the idea of hitting the ball as close to that foul line as we possibly could. It's a great place to grow up, you know, great place to come back to. I'm going to ask you in a few minutes, give you a little time to think about it, what kept you here? Because there were a lot of scouts out there with you on their mind about a lot of different things, not only sports, but then in your career of broadcasting. How did the community spirit change when we went from Robert E. Lee High to Upson Lee?
Oh, listen, I don't think it changed. I think it just intensified, especially with the athletic programs. Football especially, when the first time the two schools played each other was in 1980. And at that time, the Georgia High School Association had just implemented an overtime rule. And it's not the overtime rule that applies now, but the first time it was used locally was in the Upson High R.E. Lee game of 1980. Coach Perdue, of course, was the head coach, and a guy named Buddy Mills was the head coach at Upson High. The game went into overtime. R.E. Lee won it by virtue of what was penetration at that time. And I can remember vividly the Upson High fans got upset because it was headed into overtime, and a lot of the fans didn't realize that the GHSA, Georgia High School Association, had implemented an overtime rule. And so those Upson High fans started screaming and yelling, Coach Perdue is changing the narrative of this ball game. Yeah. There is no overtime. Well, there was, and R.E. Lee won it on the penetration rule.
What was the score?
22-21 maybe, okay. I think.
Well, since we're talking technicalities, let's slide in Kirby's call in this.
You're talking about
in the Auburn game.
Auburn game?
Now, could you explain that to me? The timeout.
The timeout. Kirby called timeout. I mean, look, he's doing this.
Yes.
Going down the sideline. Now, granted, when he got to the officials and this started,
right,
he was indicating that that's what the Auburn defense was doing.
Right.
They were basically interfering with the cadence
yeah.
of the Georgia offense.
Yeah.
But yeah, he called timeout. Now, what amazed me about it is the time that got put back on the clock.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't get charged for the timeout. But, you know, it didn't have anything to do with the outcome of the game. But that's going to be something that's going to be debated for years to come. And, of course, the controversy on was it or wasn't it a touchdown? Was it a fumble? You know, that's going to linger for a while as well.
Yeah. Does that timeout call, does that qualify as cheating?
No, let's don't go that far.
I
don't think Kirby in the back of his mind was even thinking about that. I really think he wanted the timeout.
Yeah.
Why? Well, the main reason the play clock was winding down.
Yeah, the clock.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, I won't go that far.
So it was just outsmarting, just quick thinking. You don't think he went into that run down the sidelines with that in mind?
No.
But when it happened, that was a quick call.
Yeah.
That he got himself.
His intention wasn't what most Auburn fans believe it was.
So why is football so deeply woven into our culture?
It's like a gladiator sport. You know, you're doing battle on the field. I mean, the contact of it. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that's primarily it. And, you know, we're drawn to, you know, I love to watch boxing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's that aspect of it. I believe that's the draw to it.
Mm-hmm. Is it any more woven, if you will, into the culture in any other parts of the country than it is the South?
I think the South.
The South.
Yeah, the deep South. You know, the SEC, by far the best conference in football. But, yeah, the deep South is is what made college football. Now, of course, you remember the Ivy League schools were predominantly the schools that was talked about back in the day. I mean, way back in the day.
Yeah.
But when the SEC got started, football in the South, it just started building, and that's what I think everybody gauges football on what's happening in the South. Strongest conference by far in the country.
You're known for your Friday night football calls, but I've heard you say, and I think this is a quote, that you enjoy calling basketball more than you do football.
I do.
What's that all about?
Well, the reason why basketball, once the jump ball starts the game, or now the inbound, it never stops. The game flows. It's a continuous flow. You're back and forth, up and down the court. Football, you run a play, you get to the huddle, you got a little downtime.
Right.
Plus basketball, high school basketball anyway, probably takes about half the time to complete a game than that of football. But yeah, I just like the flow of basketball, and was so privileged to have called the 2 undefeated seasons of Upson Lee basketball when they won the back-to-back state titles with Coach Darrell Lockhart up at Georgia Tech at McCamish Pavilion, and actually sold out that pavilion in those 2 championship games against St. Pius. There were people from Thomaston that went to those games, and the fire marshal, once he got full, they shut the door down. There were people from this community that stood outside McCamish that didn't get inside to watch that game or those games. That was just amazing to me that they filled that place up 2 years in a row in that championship game.
Before we get too far away from football and basketball, give me your take on NIL, NIL.
A disaster.
How?
It's the worst. Well, now you're professionalizing the sport, and it's not for the love of the game; it's for the love of the money. My philosophy now is, back in the day, like I'm a big Alabama fan, but I find myself rooting for a school and not rooting for a team, because the team concept, it changes every year. You don't know who's coming, who's going, what that team unity is going to be like from one year to the next. And with the NIL, and that's the reason Coach Saban got out of it. He saw it. I mean, right after he lost the semi-playoff game, he said within 24 hours he had players coming to him. Coach, what do you think I can get going into next year? And he knew then that the game had gotten bigger than he was. It wasn't the game that he enjoyed coaching anymore.
Where do you see it in a decade?
Well, it's going to be even worse. I mean, you're going to have, you've already got agents. The players have got agents, but I think you're going to have a salary cap somewhere down the line. Who could you imagine 6-7 years ago to say the word salary cap and college football in the same sentence? But that's where we're headed.
Are we headed next into high school?
You can get NIL deals in high school. Yes, you can.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, you had a quarterback over in Carrollton. By the time he got into college ball, he was pretty wealthy.
Yeah.
and so that's a big part of it. Again, the money, to me, has ruined is beginning or has ruined the sport.
I think we had a quarterback at Georgia who does number 4 million. Is that
Carson
pretty,
Beck? You're talking about
Oh, is that who
the
that
transfer
is?
to Miami?
You mean the Lamborghini? The
There
Lamborghini
you
guy?
go. Yeah. So,
How many years has he played college ball?
now you're asking me a question. I don't really know, but
Longer?
4 or 5.
Yeah, 5, I think. I think 5. What I loved about, one of the things I loved about radio was the opportunities it presented, the things we were exposed to and you still are exposed to. Some of us saw concerts mostly from backstage. I think the only major concert I ever saw that was not backstage was Elvis, and they had us on the second row, so it was kind of the same thing. But opportunities that people just are are unaware of. And I know you have one of the largest stables of recordings of bands that I have come across. How many? How many have you done?
You want interviews?
Yeah.
I'd say maybe close to 200.
Okay.
I was making a list yesterday, and I stopped when I got to 98. But yeah, I'm very fortunate. And listen, those interviews, we're not talking about going back 20, 30 years. That's within the past 10 years when I really started doing it. And the first interview I ever did, I had a good friend ask me if I'd ever seen Delbert McClinton in concert. I hadn't. Went to the show, fantastic show at the Variety Playhouse, at Little Five Points in Atlanta. And I wanted to interview the guy. And all I did was do a little bit of research, got on a website, saw the word contact, clicked to the link, and there's my contact information. I reached out and was fortunate enough to get a really, really good interview with Delbert McClinton. Interviewed him 3 times. And it's when you can go back and get those other interviews that they remember you from previous ones when you know you've done your homework right.
Do you prepare for those interviews?
Oh, listen.
The same way?
Great question.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. When I interviewed Jimmy Pankow of the group Chicago, I spent no less than 3 hours in research on the group of Chicago. And because I don't want to know the history of this band once they became known as Chicago, I wanted to know the struggles, how they got to be Chicago, and the price they had to pay, the traveling. And those are the things. And when I interviewed Jimmy, I can remember well, and I may be rambling here, but I remember well his manager, when I requested the interview, she told me, she said, "You've got 20 minutes. Well, listen, we're 15 minutes into the interview, and we're not even talking about Chicago yet. And I was bringing up places they had played, like Barnaby's up in Chicago. And when I threw out the name Barnaby's, Jimmy stopped. He said, "Wow, man, you've done your homework." CNN did a special on Chicago. And he told me, he said, "You're asking me questions that weren't asked in the CNN special." And I told him, I said, "Jimmy, I've only got 5 more minutes with you." He said, "Who said?" And I told him, he said, "I won't tell if you won't tell. Keep rolling." We talked for 2.5 hours.
Wow. One of your favorites?
It was one. Yeah.
Yeah.
There've been a bunch. I can't say I have a favorite, but that was one of them.
Yeah. How many? 200? And
Well, I'd say close to 200. Yeah.
How many ball games have you called?
Oh, my land's alive. I can't even begin to fathom that. You're talking about going back to baseball and, 500 maybe? I mean, really? Because you're talking 40 years of doing this. So 10, 40, 400 at least. More than, yeah.
Tell me about the improvements at Matthews Field.
If there was a facility that was in dire need of upgrade, it was that one. And thank goodness the Thomaston Upson school system saw need of it, got the artificial surface on there now. Now, there were 2 phases to this. The scoreboards have been in, a new press box has now been added. The fencing around it, the stands, well, the field was shifted, but it's now an artificial surface. And I don't know if you ever went to a high school game on a Friday night when the old surface was there, but there was a crown in the middle of that field where actually, if you stood on, say, the east side of Matthews Field looking towards the west side, you basically could hardly see the other side because of the crown from about the 40 to the 40. And so with that being done away with, but now, you're saving, you don't have to paint the field. You don't have to water it. The upkeep is gone. You're saving about $100,000 a year on upkeep of that just by having the artificial surface. I was a big supporter
I know that.
of doing that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the Thomaston Upson school system, now phase 2 has been completed with the softball field and the middle school baseball field, what used to be the Little League field.
Right.
And listen, I think we got, other than Buford High School, what they have up there now, a little mini college facility, I think we got one of the better facilities in the state of Georgia.
from WSFT to Fun 101, how has radio changed for you?
For me? Well, you know, I think the biggest part came the deregulation that you had spoke of earlier. And it kind of took away, you know, the personality that you would have with a community. Now, that didn't happen here, thank goodness. I mean, you know, we still have on-air personalities, and we still have that connect with the community. But that was the main thing, and the way the corporates came in, bought up radio stations, iHeart, those, you know, it wasn't to my liking. I don't think anybody in the business liked it, and I think it was a big travesty. But it is what it is, and, you know, you're not going to go back to those days.
Have the listeners changed in your mind?
The listeners? Not really. I think what draws them in would have to be with, you know, what your format is, what the music, what you're playing. I think that a really ideal format is to stay connected to the past, but welcome in the present and the future. If you can blend those two formats together, which I think is kind of hard to do, but if you can do that, you got an ideal format.
How has the station itself been able to maintain its prominence?
Well, you've got to have the advertising dollars for the main thing.
Right.
And you've got to have your advertising dollars come with what product you're selling. I think we got a pretty good one, to be honest with you.
Do you feel today's broadcasters have the same connection today that used to define local radio, or is Fun 101 an outlier?
No, now, you know, you got the streaming services that you have, which we're a part of, but you still have your local interest, and then you're reaching a broader audience through those streaming services. And what I really liked, we used to do a show on Sunday night. We called it the Sunday Night Classics. And once word spread, you know, what we were doing, and this was something right off the cuff. Myself, Jim Pruitt, and a guy no longer with us, and I love him to death, Chance Royal. We did theme shows. We did a 5-hour show on Woodstock. We did the Atlanta Pop Festivals of 69 and 70. We did a show on the mini shows on the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner. But once word got out, you know, what we were doing, and it wasn't what I'd call a fluff show. We did work. We would spend months on end preparing for each of those shows. And we put a pretty good product out there. And then word started spreading. And through the internet, we had people looking forward to Sunday nights. We had a huge audience outside of Upson County via the internet. And that, to me, that spoke volumes.
What's a typical day for you today?
Today? Other than sitting here talking with you, I normally get up around 6, get the coffee going. But I get to the station now around 1. We're in the middle of football season, and I do a lot of research on what's coming up for that week's game. I get on the air 3 o'clock. I'm doing that from 3 until 6. But you just don't show up at 3 o'clock, and you know this from being in the business. You just don't show up for your air shift and start talking. You prep for it. You got to be ready for it, and I take a lot of pride in that.
It shows. Most folks know your voice, but not the man behind the voice, except for you have a very large group of close friends who know you. But for those who don't, what's something about Mickey that most people don't know?
That is a very interesting question. I would have to say the fact that I let slip away one of the greatest opportunities of my life. And that would be a chance to have finished out at the University of Alabama. That haunts me to this day. Now, I don't wear it on my sleeve, but I still have nightmares about, well, not nightmares, but I still, at night, I have dreams about having been there, short period of time, I didn't see it through. Coach Bryant came to Thomaston, Georgia in December of 1972. He signed Pete Cabin and myself, Coach Cabin's son. Mm-hmm. Coach Pat Dye was the one that recruited Pete and I, and had a golden opportunity that I just basically let slip away. And I won't get into the reasons why. I thought as a 19-year-old, I had all the answers. I should have consulted my mom, maybe my dad, and before I made a hasty decision. This is a decision I made on my own. And I went to Coach Bryant. I made an appointment with Coach Bryant to go in and tell him what was going on in my life and where I thought I was headed. And he just told me, he said, why don't you just take the weekend to go think about this, because we were going home for the weekend. And I said, Coach, I pretty much made my mind up. And he looked at me, he said, okay. And I'm sitting in this man's office. And he said, the minute you cross that threshold going out of his office, you're not going to put a foot back through the door and say you've changed your mind. He said, if you want to take the weekend, you can. But if you're telling me now and you walk out of this office, it's a done deal. It was a done deal.
What was your playing weight in that picture?
I was about 260 maybe, somewhere
Really?
thereabouts.
Wow. How tall are you?
6'6".
Okay. So you were a big lineman for that
time. I listened
time.
And today, in terms of today's players,
Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah.
You got running backs that are 230 and 240.
Standing next to the young man who plays for Jacksonville. Trayvon. What a nice man. And it was an awareness, a renewed, I guess, awareness of how big those guys are, standing next to him. And we're going to show a picture of that.
And what a great ambassador for this community.
Great ambassador for the area. So where do you go from here, Mickey? I've known about you and your name for a long time, and I know you were on the radar of a lot of people for broadcasting and for other things, but something kept you here.
Laziness. And I'm going to be honest about it. I had opportunities to leave, and I got comfortable in my skin. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to make it sound like there's some conceit to it, but maybe a little bit. I'm in this community. I'm known for what I do. I'm comfortable with that. I got too comfortable with that, and I should have pursued those other opportunities that were out there, and I just didn't do it. And again, I'd say just because I was lazy, I was, and didn't go for it.
Well, you were comfortable, hardly lazy.
I was comfortable, yeah, no doubt. Still am.
Comfortable. Mickey Thrasher. Old Doc's a big fan of yours. If Mick's on the air, I listen. If he's calling a game, I don't care what the score is, I listen. Keep on listening to the radio, and he's focused on our hometown. And he represents the radio stations that survived the 1996 Telecommunications Act that we have talked about for a little bit. Nobody does it like Mickey Thrasher, WTGA FM, Fun 101 FM in Thomaston, Georgia. Mickey, thank you very much.
Oh, appreciate it, Doc. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Great guy and a legend in this town, Mickey Thrasher. What's next, Ellie?
Thanks, Mickey. That was a great interview. Next week, Rusty Blackston is a former Upson County Commissioner and past chairman of the board who built his reputation on hands-on local government. Later, he became a central voice in the community's opposition to the proposed Brightmark Plastics to Fuel facility. The following week, we have Upson County Tax Commissioner Andy Chastain, who provides his take on a novel way to generate more tax revenue called FLOST. He'll sit down with Doc and Ellie to talk about its pros and its cons, who it benefits and who doesn't benefit from it, just days before you decide in the voting booth if you support it or if you do not.
Thanks, Ellie. Till we meet again, happy trails to you. And thanks to James Hyde, Doc and Ellie podcast producer extraordinaire, who brings all this together into a cohesive work of art. Excelsior, friends, this is Doc Granger. Our group of local influencers just got back from a tour of Brightmark's perpetually underperforming plant in Indiana, having their pictures taken with big corporate honchos and getting off the plane back home, carrying a prize for their words of support, expected they will deliver back home, a tote bag. Like you get at most motivational conferences, as I was reminded, you've got influencers for and influencers against Brightmark. This idea was contributed by a 360 News reader in recognition of an influencer who is solidly against this economic direction for the community. His name is Doc. We continue to state our case at 360news.com. Thanks for the tote bag idea from a reader who chooses to remain anonymous.